In the quiet hush of the Scottish Highlands, where the air hangs heavy with mist and memory, there stands a castle that has witnessed more than a century of royal triumphs, heartbreaks, secrets, and solemn vows. Balmoral, a name that does not merely echo through stone corridors, it breathes, and now a story has emerged. A story whispered in drawing rooms, speculated upon in headlines, and debated across the world. A secret will, a surprising inheritance, and a young royal stepping into unexpected destiny. Tonight we unravel the dramatic narrative surrounding Balmoral, the late Queen Elizabeth II, and the quiet granddaughter at the center of it all, Lady Louise Windsor. Settle in. Because this is not just a story about property, it is a story about legacy. Chapter 1. The castle in the mist. Balmoral, a royal sanctuary, Balmoral Castle sits quietly among the rolling hills of Aberdeenshire. Purchased in 1852 by Prince Albert. For Queen Victoria, it was never meant to be merely another royal residence. It was intended as an escape. Victoria adored Scotland, its raw beauty, its rugged romance. After Albert's death, Balmoral became her refuge in grief. And from that moment onward, the estate was woven deeply into the emotional fabric of the monarchy. But for Queen Elizabeth II, Balmoral became something even more sacred. It was where she felt most like herself. No tiara, no red boxes, no ceremony, just countryside horses, family, and quiet. She drove her own Land Rover there. She hosted summer barbecues. She laughed freely, and ultimately, in September 2022, it was there that her remarkable 70-year reign came to its close. Chapter 2. The Queen's final chapter. In her final years, Queen Elizabeth appeared frailer, yet her mind remained sharp, her dedication unwavering. Balmoral was not just a summer residence during that time, it was a place of reflection. She had outlived her beloved husband, Prince Philip. She had seen the monarchy weather storms of modern scrutiny, family tensions, and generational change. She understood, perhaps more clearly than anyone, that legacy is fragile. And so, speculation begins here. When a monarch who has lived nearly a century contemplates the future, what decisions are made quietly behind palace walls? Royal wills are sealed, legally protected, private for decades. The public cannot see them, which leaves room for imagination. Chapter 3. The Unexpected. Granddaughter Lady Louise Windsor has never chased headlines. The daughter of Prince Edward, and Sophie, Duchess of Edinburgh, she grew up largely shielded from intense media glare, reserved, thoughtful, soft-spoken, but there was one passion she shared deeply with her grandmother: carriage driving. It was Prince Philip who first introduced her to it, and the Queen delighted in watching her progress. At Balmoral, Louise thrived, riding horses, embracing country life, finding joy far from flashing cameras. Insiders have long described a special bond between grandmother and granddaughter. While other royals navigated global attention, Lady Louise offered something simple: normalcy. She reportedly declined the use of an HRH title in daily life. She attended university quietly. She worked part-time jobs during holidays. She did not demand the spotlight. She simply belonged. Chapter 4. The Will That No One Can See. Now we enter the heart of the narrative. By tradition, the private estates of a monarch, including Balmoral and Sandringham, pass directly to the next sovereign, in this case to King Charles III, and officially that is what occurred. Yet rumors have circulated, whispers of a personal clause, of a specific bequest, of a desire to protect Balmoral not as a political symbol, but as a sanctuary preserved in spirit. Let us be absolutely clear. There is no public evidence confirming that Lady Louise inherited Balmoral, but storytelling thrives where secrecy exists, and the idea resonates because it feels poetic. The Queen entrusting her cherished refuge to the granddaughter who loved it most, not the heir, not the Queen consort, but the quiet custodian. Chapter 5. The Camilla Question Queen. Camilla has walked a complex path to her role. Once controversial, now more widely accepted, she stands beside King Charles III as queen consort. Yet Balmoral was never her emotional anchor. It belonged to Elizabeth, so when headlines declare, Camilla ordered to leave immediately, they ignite imagination. But reality is far less theatrical. Even if ownership were complex, residency arrangements would involve legal structures, security services, staff coordination, and royal protocol. No dramatic eviction, no last-minute packing. The monarchy functions through order, not spectacle. Still, symbolism matters. If Balmoral were entrusted elsewhere, it would signal something profound. Chapter 6. A Monarchy in Transition. The modern British monarchy balances ancient tradition with contemporary scrutiny. King Charles III ascended the throne at 73. His reign began amid global mourning and economic uncertainty. He inherited not just a crown, but expectations. Would he slim down the monarchy? Would he modernize it? Would he preserve tradition? A decision regarding Balmoral, if ever unconventional, would ripple symbolically. It would suggest that Queen Elizabeth's final wishes extended beyond strict hierarchy, and perhaps that she saw stability in the next generation. Chapter 7. The Power of Symbolism. Why does this story captivate millions? Because Balmoral represents authenticity. Unlike Buckingham Palace, an institution, Balmoral feels personal. It is muddy boots and tartan blankets. It is rain against stone windows. It is family dinners without cameras. To imagine that such a place might pass to Lady Louise is to imagine continuity unburdened by controversy. It is the monarchy's softer side, and in an era of polarized headlines that narrative soothes. Chapter 8. The Legal Reality. Let us ground ourselves once more. Royal wills are sealed for up to 90 years under court order. The contents remain inaccessible. However, precedent strongly supports that Balmoral passed to King Charles III upon the Queen's death. There is no verified documentation suggesting otherwise. The notion of Camilla being ordered to leave is unsubstantiated. Yet, even unverified stories reveal public sentiment. They reveal who people trust, who they feel embodies tradition, who they see as guardians of legacy. Chapter 9. The Young Woman at the Center Lady. Louise Windsor continues her studies. She lives modestly. She participates in royal duties occasionally, but not extensively. She does not appear to seek power, and perhaps that is precisely why people imagine her entrusted with something so meaningful. In her, many see echoes of Elizabeth's steadiness, not ambition, but duty, not noise, but calm. Chapter 10. What Balmoral truly inherits. Balmoral is more than land. It holds the laughter of children, the weight of mourning, the echo of a monarch who reigned through 15 prime ministers, global wars, technological revolutions, and seismic social change. Whether held by a king or safeguarded for future generations, its spirit remains constant. The image of Queen Elizabeth in a headscarf walking her dogs across Highland grass endures in collective memory. That is the inheritance. Closing narration. So, did Lady Louise inherit Balmoral? There is no confirmed evidence. Was Camilla ordered to leave immediately? There is no proof. But the endurance of the story tells us something powerful. It tells us that people long for continuity anchored in sincerity. It tells us that legacy matters. And it reminds us that behind crowns and titles stand human beings, grandparents and grandchildren, husbands and wives, fathers and daughters. As the Highland wind moves once more across the estate, brushing against ancient stone and whispering through pine trees, Balmoral stands unchanged, a silent witness, a keeper of secrets. And somewhere within its walls lives the memory of a queen who understood that true power lies not in possession, but in preservation, and perhaps that is the greatest inheritance of all. The morning after a monarch passes is unlike any other. There are no ordinary sunrises in moments like these. The light feels different. The air carries something heavier, something final. At Balmoral, the hills stood silent. The flag above, the castle had already been lowered. Staff moved quietly through corridors that had, only hours earlier, housed a reigning sovereign, and inside those walls, history shifted. When Queen Elizabeth II passed away at Balmoral in September 2022, the monarchy entered a moment it had anticipated for decades, and yet could never truly prepare for. Because when a sovereign dies, the crown does not wait, it moves instantly. The king is dead. Long live the king. At that precise moment, King Charles III became monarch, but Balmoral remained. Stone does not change with titles. Land does not bend to ceremony. The castle had seen this before. Victoria, Edward, George, Elizabeth, now Charles. Yet amid the constitutional clarity, the emotional undercurrents were far more complex. Chapter 12. Inside the royal estate Balmoral as private property unlike. Buckingham Palace, Balmoral is not owned by the Crown Estate. It is privately held. That distinction matters. It means the estate can be inherited, gifted, or structured according to personal wishes, within legal bounds. And this is where public fascination intensifies. Because private property allows private decisions. When King Charles inherited Balmoral, it was widely understood to be through established precedent. But estates of such magnitude often include trusts, life interests, usage rights, and long-term preservation clauses. In aristocratic families, properties sometimes pass not strictly to the eldest child, but to the individual deemed most suited to safeguard them. It is not about favoritism. It is about stewardship. And in royal storytelling, the idea of stewardship is powerful. Chapter 13. The weight on Charles's shoulders. For decades, Charles waited. He prepared. He studied constitutional law. He developed environmental initiatives. He modernized charitable structures. But nothing prepares a son for inheriting not just a crown, but his mother's personal world. Balmoral was his childhood playground. He climbed its hills. He fished its rivers. He proposed to Princess Diana. There in 1981, it was where family photographs were taken in tweed and tartan. It was where arguments happened, where reconciliations unfolded. To inherit Balmoral is to inherit memory, and memory is heavier than any crown. Chapter 14. Camilla's position, Queen. Camilla entered Balmoral years before she became queen consort. For her, the estate symbolized acceptance. Gradual, hard-earned acceptance. There was a time when her presence at Balmoral would have been unthinkable. Public opinion was harsh. The monarchy was under strain. But time, patience, and consistency reshaped that narrative. By the later years of Elizabeth's reign, Camilla was a regular at Balmoral summers. She walked the grounds. She hosted guests. She settled into rhythms that had existed long before her. So the suggestion of her being ordered to leave immediately strikes at something deeper than property. It strikes at belonging. And belonging, within royal life, is often a fragile achievement. Chapter 15. The quiet strength of Lady Louise. Lady Louise Windsor has never positioned herself at the center of royal transition. She did not give interviews. She did not signal ambition. Instead, she attended university. She continued carriage driving, a passion she inherited from Prince Philip. She appeared at key family events with composure beyond her years. At Prince Philip's funeral, she was steady. At the Queen's funeral, she was solemn, composed in grief. Observers noted her maturity, and in moments of national mourning, such qualities do not go unnoticed. The narrative of inheritance, speculative though it may be, rests not on evidence, but on emotional logic. Who feels like the natural guardian of Balmoral's spirit? For many, the answer is not about rank, it is about temperament. Chapter 16. The sealed envelope royal wills are sealed for up to 90 years. That means that whatever Queen Elizabeth wrote, however detailed, however simple, remains locked, away from public scrutiny. Imagine the scene. A quiet room, legal advisors present, documents signed in steady handwriting. The Queen was known for clarity, for precision, for understanding the long arc of consequence. Would she have deviated from tradition? There is no proof. But history reminds us that monarchs, though bound by duty, retain personal agency over private matters. The sealed envelope fuels imagination precisely because it cannot be opened, and secrecy always invites storytelling. Chapter 17. A monarchy. Watching itself, the British monarchy today exists in an era of relentless transparency, every move analyzed, every gesture dissected. Yet some aspects remain intentionally private, and perhaps must remain so. If Balmoral's future were ever structured in a way that ensured its preservation beyond one reign, it would reflect foresight, not rebellion. King. Charles himself has long advocated for environmental protection. His connection to land stewardship runs deep. Perhaps the greatest irony in this narrative is that Charles and Louise share similar values regarding rural life and sustainability. The idea of tension may make headlines, but alignment may be closer to reality. Chapter 18. The public's emotional investment. Why does this story refuse to fade? Because it touches on universal themes. Grandmother and granddaughter. Tradition and change. Inheritance and identity. When people imagine Lady Louise inheriting Balmoral, they are imagining continuity untouched by scandal. They are imagining a return to quiet dignity. They are imagining a monarchy less about hierarchy and more about heart. Whether or not that aligns with legal reality almost becomes secondary in public imagination. Stories survive because they satisfy emotional truth, even when factual certainty is absent. Chapter 19. The Highlands remain. The River Dee continues its steady flow past Balmoral's grounds. Deer still cross the estate at dusk, the pines still sway in Highland wind. Long after debates quiet and headlines shift elsewhere, the land remains unchanged. The Douai is the paradox of monarchy. Human drama unfolds, but stone endures. Chapter 20. What comes next? Perhaps the true question is not who owns Balmoral. Perhaps it is this. Who will define its next chapter? Will it remain primarily a private retreat for King Charles and Queen Camilla? Will future generations, including Lady Louise, carve their own memories into its landscape? Will it become a symbol of modernization or a fortress of tradition? The answer lies not in rumors but in time, because monarchy is not shaped in a single moment. It is shaped in decades, and as the Highlands fall into evening once more, Balmoral stands as it always has, watchful, patient, silent. A castle that has seen queens rise and empires shift, a castle that keeps its secrets. And somewhere within its ancient walls lingers the quiet presence of a woman who understood that legacy is never about possession alone, it is about guardianship. The story continues. In the days following the Queen's passing, Balmoral was not the only royal residence wrapped in silence. Just a short distance away sits Birkhall, the private home long cherished by King Charles III. Smaller than Balmoral, less imposing, but deeply personal. It was here that private conversations unfolded, not constitutional meetings, not state briefings, but family discussions, the kind that never reached the court circular. Around polished wooden tables and beneath oil portraits of ancestors, the future of Balmoral, practical, symbolic, emotional, would have been acknowledged, if not formally debated. Because while the law may be clear, emotions are rarely so simple. Chapter 22. Memory versus monarchy. There is a distinction within royal life that the public often overlooks. The crown is eternal, but the family is human. When Queen Elizabeth II walked the hills of Balmoral, she was not the crown. She was a mother, a grandmother, a widow remembering her late husband, Prince Philip. That human dimension complicates inheritance. For Charles, Balmoral is layered with decades of personal history, from childhood freedom to adult responsibility. For Queen Camilla, it represents years of gradual integration into a family that once resisted her presence. For Lady Louise Windsor, it may represent something quieter: summers, horses, shared laughter with a grandmother who ruled the world yet cherished simplicity. Ownership, in this context, becomes almost secondary to emotional geography. Chapter 23. The Optics. Of power, if there is one lesson modern monarchy has learned, it is this: perception shapes reality. Even unverified rumors carry weight when repeated often enough. The suggestion that Lady Louise inherited Balmoral resonates because it aligns with a broader public desire, a monarchy seen as grounded, unpretentious, less entangled in past controversies. But optics cut both ways. If Charles were perceived as sidelining family sentiment for strict hierarchy, critics would stir. If Camilla were portrayed as displacing a younger generation, speculation would swell. Yet the monarchy survives precisely because it adapts quietly. It absorbs speculation. It allows silence to outlast rumor. And in most cases, time dissolves drama. Chapter 24. The young generation's role. Lady Louise is part of a generation that did not grow up in the same media climate as her uncles and aunts. She witnessed the intense scrutiny faced by Prince William and Prince Harry. She saw how quickly narratives form and fracture. Perhaps that awareness shaped her decision to remain understated. Her path has been careful, almost deliberate in its normalcy. University lectures, student housing, part-time work during holidays. In an age when visibility often equates to influence, she has chosen restraint. And restraint, in royal terms, can be powerful. Chapter 25. A question of stewardship. Let us imagine, purely hypothetically, that Balmoral were structured under a trust designed to protect it across generations. Such arrangements are not uncommon among historic estates. They ensure preservation regardless of shifting titles. In that scenario, Lady Louise would not be a replacement for the monarch. She would be a custodian of memory, and that distinction matters. Because monarchy at its core is about continuity, ensuring that institutions outlive individuals. Balmoral has already outlived multiple sovereigns. It will likely outlive many more. The question is never who possesses it in a single moment. The question is who safeguards its essence. Chapter 26. The silence of the palace. One of the most striking aspects of this entire narrative is what has not happened. No official rebuttal, no detailed clarification, no public legal explanation. Silence. And in royal strategy, silence often serves a purpose. Engaging rumors can amplify them. Ignoring them allows them to fade. The palace understands that public fascination with inheritance stories is cyclical. Today, it is Balmoral. Tomorrow, it will be another residence, another family dynamic. The institution moves forward regardless. Chapter 27. The weight of expectation. King Charles now carries dual responsibilities: preserve his mother's legacy, define his own. That balance is delicate. If he maintains Balmoral exactly as Elizabeth did, he risks appearing static. If he alters it too dramatically, he risks unsettling tradition. And within that balance lies the emotional undercurrent of public speculation. Would Elizabeth have wanted continuity or evolution? Would she have prioritized hierarchy or sentiment? These questions, unanswerable as they are, fuel endless analysis. Chapter 28. The landscape as witness. Seasons change at Balmoral with quiet authority. Autumn drapes the hills in amber and rust. Winter cloaks the castle in frost. Spring returns with cautious green. Through each transition, the estate remains indifferent to human speculation. It witnessed Victoria's mourning. It saw Edward VII's brief reign. It endured world wars. It welcomed Elizabeth's childhood innocence and her final breath. It will witness whatever comes next. Chapter 29. The Emotional Truth. Whether or not Lady Louise ever inherits Balmoral in a legal sense may ultimately matter less than this. She embodies a quality the public associates with the late Queen: steadiness. And perhaps that is the true reason this narrative persists. It is not about eviction. It is not about rivalry. It is about reassurance. Reassurance that the monarchy's quieter virtues endure. That amid controversy and modern pressures, there remains a thread of calm continuity. Chapter 30. The Unwritten Future. The British monarchy has survived abdications, divorces, wars, and cultural revolutions. It adapts slowly, sometimes reluctantly. But it adapts, as King Charles shapes his reign, as Queen Camilla defines her role, as younger royals step gradually into public life. Balmoral remains both symbol and sanctuary. Lady Louise's story is still unfolding. She is young, her path not yet fully defined. Perhaps she will assume greater public duties. Perhaps she will choose a quieter life beyond the center of monarchy. Either way, the fascination surrounding her potential connection to Balmoral reveals something essential about public imagination. People do not merely follow the monarchy, they project hopes onto it. And in those hopes, Balmoral becomes more than stone. It becomes a promise. A promise that amid change, something steady remains. As twilight settles once again over the Highlands, the castle lights glow softly against darkening hills. Inside, life continues, measured, deliberate, enduring. The story does not end with a will. It continues with every generation that walks those grounds. And somewhere, carried on Highland wind, echoes the quiet legacy of a queen who understood that the greatest power is not in commanding, but in preserving. History does not rush. It breathes slowly, like the wind over the Highlands, steady, patient, indifferent to the urgency of headlines. Balmoral has learned this lesson well. Long before television panels debated inheritance, before social media spun speculation into certainty, the castle stood beneath Scottish skies as monarch after monarch passed through its doors. It saw the romance of Queen Victoria and Prince Albert. It witnessed the quiet determination of Queen Elizabeth II. It now shelters the reign of King Charles. Though the castle does not choose its inhabitants, it receives them. Chapter 32. The human heart of the crown monarchy, at its most enduring, is less about grandeur and more about continuity. Behind ceremonial robes and balcony appearances are ordinary human emotions: grief, loyalty, pride, doubt. When Queen Elizabeth spent her final days at Balmoral, it was not a political decision. It was personal. She chose to be where she felt most at peace. That choice tells us something profound. The queen who had access to palaces across a kingdom chose the quiet hills of Scotland, not for optics, not for tradition, but for comfort. And that choice alone explains why Balmoral carries such emotional gravity. Chapter 33. The Role of Queen Camilla. Queen Camilla stands today not as a rival to legacy, but as part of its unfolding chapter. Her journey into public acceptance was not swift. It required endurance, resilience, silence in the face of criticism. To suggest that she could be ordered to leave immediately is to imagine drama where there is, in reality, structure. Royal households do not operate on sudden decrees of emotion. They move through consultation, precedent, and careful planning. Camilla's place at Balmoral, like her role beside the king, is shaped by time and constitutional clarity. Belonging in royal life is rarely instantaneous. It is earned gradually and maintained quietly. Chapter 34. Lady Louise and the future Lady Louise Windsor remains one of the monarchy's most understated figures. She does not command headlines. She does not seek influence. And yet, her presence evokes something reassuring, a reminder that royal life can still be modest, sincere, grounded. Whether or not she ever formally inherits Balmoral is almost beside the point, because inheritance is not always written in legal documents. Sometimes it is written in memory, in shared carriage rides with Prince Philip, in quiet walks with her grandmother, in laughter carried across Highland hills. Those experiences cannot be transferred by deed. They already belong to her. Chapter 35. What the public sees. The public often interprets monarchy through narrative. Every generation searches for figures who reflect its values, stability, authenticity, humility. In Lady Louise, many see those qualities mirrored from Elizabeth. In Charles, they see continuity of duty. In Camilla, they see resilience and adaptation. And in Balmoral, they see the physical embodiment of those threads woven together. Chapter 36. The architecture of Legacy Balmoral endures. The castle's granite. Walls glow gold at sunset. The River Dee continues its steady course. Heather blooms. Frost settles. Seasons cycle without concern for speculation. Balmoral has endured wars, abdications, divorces, triumphs, jubilees. It will endure this chapter too, because legacy is architectural as much as it is emotional. It is built layer upon layer, sovereign upon sovereign, until the structure stands independent of any single name. Chapter 37. The truth beneath the story. Here is what remains clear. There is no verified evidence that Lady Louise inherited Balmoral. There is no confirmation that Queen Camilla was ordered to leave. The established understanding is that Balmoral passed to King Charles III as part of the late Queen's private estate. Yet the persistence of this story reveals something telling. It reveals a public desire for simplicity, within an institution often perceived as complex. It reveals a longing for narratives rooted in affection rather than authority. And perhaps most importantly, it reveals that the monarchy still matters deeply to millions, enough to inspire debate over even its most private corners. Chapter 38. The final reflection. As night falls over the Highlands, Balmoral rests beneath a canopy of stars. Somewhere within its rooms hang portraits of monarchs long gone. Their reigns once dominated headlines, their decisions once shaped nations. Now they are history. One day, today's figures will be history too. King Charles's reign will settle into textbooks. Queen Camilla's evolution will be analyzed with hindsight. Lady Louise's path will have unfolded, whatever direction she chooses. And Balmoral? It will remain. Because the true inheritance of Balmoral is not ownership, it is continuity. It is the understanding that power passes, titles shift, but stewardship endures. Closing narration. In the end, the story of The Secret Will speaks less about conflict and more about connection. Connection between grandmother and granddaughter, between past and future, between monarchy and the people who watch it so closely. Balmoral is not simply a castle. It is memory carved in stone, and whether guarded by a king, cherished by a young royal, or preserved for generations yet unborn, its spirit remains untouched by rumor. As the Highland wind sweeps once more across its ancient grounds, it carries with it the quiet echo of a reign that defined an era, and the steady promise of those who will carry that legacy forward, not through spectacle, but through guardianship. And so the story closes, not with eviction or upheaval, but with the enduring stillness of a castle that has always known how to keep its secrets. The end.